Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm going to ask those who just
I'm here.
entered the room
Alexia's on here.
if you wouldn't mind just muting yourselves if you're entering the room and you're not a panelist yourself. Um, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for being on time, some of you being earlier. Um, wow, this is great. Um, it's also great that many of you have muted your videos. Um, It's not necessarily required. You can feel free to unmute your video if you so choose, but also don't feel obligated to. But you're more than welcome to. So we're about 5 minutes over our start time. So I think I'm just going to get us started. And I'll get us started by introducing myself. My name is Jeff Wallace. I'm the director of campus ministry here at Gwynedd Mercy University. Very much appreciate the 42 of us who are here together virtually, which we've learned over the past 18 months is a very legitimate way to gather. So very excited that all of you have decided to join us. And so tonight, our virtual discussion will be on a topic called Modern Mercy Leadership. Some of you may be first year students and have arrived here, and I am sure have heard the term mercy um, just all over the place. And so hopefully this conversation will not only introduce you a little bit more deeply to what mercy is, but how that concept of mercy is lived in modern times in today's day and age. I also just want to reiterate, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. And so if you have not muted your microphone or muted yourself, please do so so that we can have clarity of sound for all of those who are part of this conversation. Thank you so much. So without further ado, I'm just going to point out our esteemed panelists. So Stephen Rufy is here with us, as well as Marnie Baim and Rachel Bilgard. They have agreed to be with us tonight to talk about this concept of modern mercy leadership. And so to our three panelists, I'm going to ask you to reintroduce yourselves because I'm not sure I quite got your names right. Talk a little bit about your background and then talk a little bit about how you define the term mercy, given your own experience working with projects and ministries and or locations affiliated with the Sisters of Mercy. And so I think I'm going to start with Stephen and then we'll go to Rachel and then Marnie. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Jeff, for the introduction. My name is Stephen Roof. I graduated from G Mercy U in 2012 with my Bachelor of Science in Elementary and Special Education. And my experience in working with the Sisters of Mercy goes beyond my time at Gwynedd, but at Gwynedd with alternative spring break trips for a couple of years. After that, I was in New York City for a couple of years, hosted an ASB group there for dinner one night, and then moved out to Arizona to a Native American reservation where there were some Sisters of Mercy who were at a Catholic school out there, and also hosted Allie and Michelle, who are on the call, for some alternative spring break trips for a few years while I was out in Arizona. And I also am a Mercy associate as well. Who am I tossing it to? Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Bielgard. I just graduated from a Mercy institution. I attended Salve Regina, which is in Rhode Island. And from there, I am now serving a year with the Mercy Volunteer Corps. And Marnie and I are both here in Philadelphia. I'm working at an agency called Project Home. They do a lot of homeless outreach. So they have a 24-hour hotline where people can call in whether they're experiencing homelessness or if you see someone experiencing homelessness in Philadelphia, you can call our hotline and we'll send out outreach workers to meet them where they are, assess their situation. If they just need food and water, we'll provide that. If they're interested in learning more about shelter, we can help them in transportation to get there and give more information to them about that as well. So And then I guess mercy to me, I really think is just being loving and inclusive and accepting of all. Just loving your neighbor, and treating everyone with kindness. And I'll pass it on to Marnie.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Marnie. I am, I guess just like a background, originally from Wisconsin, and I graduated from Viterbo University in 2020, which is a Franciscan university, so not Mercy, but still similar values, I would say. And after graduating, I did a year of service with Mercy Volunteer Corps, and I'm currently in my second year of service with Mercy Volunteer Corps. So my first year I spent in San Francisco, working at an organization called The Healing Well, which is basically just kind of like a community healing center. And our primary population that we served was people who are recovering from homelessness or recovering or still struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. And then this year I am serving in Philadelphia with Rachel, but at a different organization. I work at an organization called Witness to Innocence, and they are an organization that is led by and just works to empower the voices of people who have been exonerated from death row, and just engaging them to be like the voices in the movement of abolishing the death penalty in the US. So that's what I do now. And I guess I would say that my relationship with Mercy has been just through obviously through doing Mercy Volunteer Corps and getting to meet and interact with Sisters of Mercy through that. It's not something I had been familiar with before, but have definitely become way more familiar with over the past 2 years. And I think to me, Mercy is just having like a deep compassion for everyone that's kind of based upon the relationships that we form, and kind of understanding that everyone that we encounter, we can enter into relationship with and find just like our commonalities, just based upon the fact that we all have a shared humanity, and just keeping that at like the forefront of every interaction we have with people, I think is showing mercy.
And I was just going to jump in real quick to say 2 additional things. I obviously can't walk and chew gum, so I forgot to say what I do now and respond to the original question. So right now I serve as the Director for Positive Behavior Support for the School District of Philadelphia. So I oversee a team of about 20 individuals that operate and support leadership teams in 100 schools throughout the district. And if I were able to just really simply define to me what mercy really means and what it looks like, is seeing a need and meeting that need and finding a way to meet that need.
Excellent. Those are fantastic answers. And also just to name Marnie, so Witness to Innocence was founded by somebody who many people might know, Sister Helen Prejean, which is pretty amazing. So I just think that's really cool that you work for an organization founded by Sister Helen Prejean. So all of you have seemingly experience working in these types of ministries that are affiliated with Mercy and have Mercy values. And, each of you have had different levels of engagement in terms of your time with these ministries and different projects. So, you've had some experience with how some of these sisters or some people are kind of leading with mercy, so engaging in mercy leadership. So my second question for you, and maybe we can start with Marnie this time, how would you characterize kind of mercy leadership as compared to other leadership styles you've experienced in the past? Like what makes leading with mercy different than, say, kind of just being a leader in any other space? We can start with Marnie on that.
For sure. For me, I guess I would say that I see mercy leadership as being very community based. And I remember of like a form of leadership I learned about in college that I think actually kind of like accurately sums it up, but it's called like servant leadership. So basically like in servant leadership, like the goal of the leader is like first and foremost to serve. And so they're leading by example rather than sort of telling people what to do. And I think that's really what like I have seen Mercy leadership as being, is it's really all of the Sisters of Mercy are very like in the forefront of like the movement of whatever they're engaged in, and really just are not telling people what to do, but rather showing people what to do by just acting with mercy. So that's how I see it.
Thanks for that. Stephen or Rachel, if either of you want to respond to that or add to that, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I think that I don't know. My first time interacting with the Sisters of Mercy was when I had transferred from a different college to Salve Regina, and I wasn't as very familiar with the Sisters of Mercy. But honestly, during my time there, like I just became so enamored by the sisters and their love for justice, and their action that they take. And I think that's really what's different, and kind of what Marnie was saying, that first you must serve. And like I grew up Catholic, so like I most of my interactions with other sisters were like education based, or like just very prayerful. And not to say that the Sisters of Mercy aren't prayerful, but they also have an action aspect to them, which I think is just so amazing. And I remember like the first time meeting as one of the Sisters of Mercy, she was telling us about like the work she was doing on the Texas border, and how they were working to restore just like human dignity for those individuals, and how she, through that process, had been arrested multiple times. And I was like, these sisters are so amazing in the work that they're doing. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of what makes the difference. And also like in this Mercy leadership, like they really focus on the human and the importance of a human being, to provide services for them, which I think is really awesome.
Thank you for that, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to say servant leadership too, Marnie. So I'm really glad you used that terminology and went in that direction. I think with that sort of focus on serving, there's also a focus on what are those critical concerns, just like the critical concerns of mercy. What are the ones we want to invest in? Recognizing that the sisters are dwindling in number as the years go on. That's our role, to carry on that mission as folks who go to Gwynedd Mercy University or have graduated from Gwynedd Mercy University. We live those critical concerns, and being able to live those day in and day out is really being a modern mercy leader. It's able to say, we put things like immigration and the earth first. We put women first in our priorities, and we invest in our time, our action, and our energy behind those critical concerns to be able to make a difference towards something. I think most of us probably on this call have concerns that are near and dear to our heart in some sort of social justice manner, and being able to fine tune those in a way that gives you purpose. Like for me, it was education, and that was a really clear purpose for me, to go where I was called in the Bronx, New York, and in San Carlos, Arizona, and now back home in Philly. It's again seeing that need and meeting it, but doing it in a way that is targeted towards something that is aligned with the mission of the Sisters of Mercy.
Thank you. That was excellent. I mean, this is great conversation already. For those on the call, I gave kind of preset questions to our panelists, and there's so many different directions that I want to go, but I'm going to try and stick to the questions as best I can. And so, Rachel and Marnie, it was interesting, both of your answers. Marnie, you focused on the communal piece, and Rachel, you focused on the individual piece of this kind of modern mercy leadership. And both of you have decided to take a year of your lives to do kind of service with what's called Mercy Volunteer Corps. And so I guess, given your thoughts about modern mercy leadership specifically, and then Stephen, you can kind of jump in as well because of your experience taking time in Arizona on a Native American reservation, in other ways too. Was it these things that you're naming about modern mercy leadership? Was it these things that really drew you to the Sisters of Mercy and what they do in modern day, or was there more to it? So I guess we'll start with Rachel on that one. Does that question make sense? Yes. I
Like
hope so.
drawn to the Mercy
Yeah.
Volunteer.
So, you said you went to Salve and you saw how the sisters were just really focused on the individual and providing for their needs. So was that the only thing, or was there, as you kind of spun out and spent more time at Salve, were there more things that attracted you to, like, say, I'm going to take a year of my life to do Mercy Volunteer Corps?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always imagined myself doing some type of year of service after school. I was a social work major, so I really wanted to do something with that by taking a year, and also just kind of like before like moving on to my master's degree. But I think what really drew me to the Mercy Volunteer Corps is like not only their the service aspect, but also the community aspect, and the fact that like we live in community with other Mercy volunteers, and a lot of this program is it's building community with those individuals is so important, and like forming relationships and being able to serve together almost. So I think that's what kind of drew me, and just like the works of mercy were while I was going to school, it was incorporated into a lot of our classwork. In every class, we tried to look at the works of mercy. So I think, I don't know, just going to school and learning about the Sisters of Mercy, the works of mercy. Once I found out about the Mercy Volunteer Corps, I was like, yes, that's what I want to do. That's how I want to serve after graduation. So yeah.
That's great. Marty, since this is your second year in Mercy Volunteer Corps, similar question, you've decided that 1 year wasn't enough. And so what brought you back, I guess, to say, I want to do another year? What attracted you to do this particular ministry with the sisters?
Yeah, for me, like similar to Rachel, like I definitely always saw myself doing a year of service also. But obviously there's like so many organizations that I could have chosen. And so I think that specifically like what stood out to me initially about Mercy Volunteer Corps, and I think is very much like rooted in the values of Mercy, the Sisters of Mercy, was just the idea of they really emphasize like living in a spirit of mutuality, and like living in solidarity with the people you're serving, and also like as we serve, like we are not telling people what we think they need. We are not going in there with like preconceived ideas of like what change needs to look like. We are going just to be in relationship with people and listen to them and hear what they want to see, because they know better than anyone else. And that was really, really important to me. So definitely like I had a really good experience with that the first time around. Like I felt like where I served just really, really embodied that, just like lifting up the humanity of everyone, and putting like human dignity and just that at the forefront rather than like anything else. And and wanting to do a second year, I think I felt like there was obviously just more ways I could grow. And my service site last year, it was kind of more like not technical difficulties, or different reasonings, just in the sense of like where I served last year is very different from where I am serving this year, in terms of like last year was very like community relationship based, and this year is far more like advocacy kind of thing. So I think I kind of just wanted like a different perspective in that way. But obviously I wanted to stay with Mercy because I had like such a good experience with all of the values that they uplift, just being a lot of my own values as well. So
that's great. And I imagine, Stephen, I mean, hearing all that from Marty and Rachel maybe resonates with your desire, again, to go out to Arizona and also to be part of Alternative Breaks while you were at Gwinnett. But yeah, just responding to the question of why did you decide to do the stuff with the sisters as you did?
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's responding. Yeah.
I think it's important to be transparent and say what drew me to Mercy in the first place was that I got the most certificates from Gwynedd as a teacher out of any program that I applied to. So I didn't know anything about the mission behind Mercy or Gwynedd Mercy University before I stepped foot on campus. So really where I got drawn into the true mission was just being actively involved on campus. Being able to attend a Mercy Meets the UN conference, going to Cincinnati for ASB and Laredo for ASB, joining the education club, being heavily involved in campus ministry and doing some service work at Cradles to Crayons and the Lamb Foundation. All of those experiences is where I got to see the face of Mercy on all of the people who still are ingrained in my brain. I can still remember playing bingo at the Lamb Foundation and having a couple of the people always laugh and say things when I'd say before and after, when I'd call the number before, right? So like those faces never leave your brain. But I think what continued to draw me to Mercy anywhere I was in the world, whether it was New York City or in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, was the stories of the sisters. The stories of the sisters just really, crept into my mind no matter where I was. On the reservation in Arizona, Sister Georgia, who also was my mentor for the Mercy Associate program. She was the principal of the Catholic school St. Charles out on the reservation, and her story resonated with me growing up the way she grew up and similar to how I grew up. And Sister Anne, my mentor teacher, when I student taught on the reservation, was really integral for me to be able to learn and grow as a teacher. And I still use some of the phrases that she used when I student taught with her. So I think it's the action got me involved in the mission at Gwynedd, but I think it was the faces of the people that I worked with that kept the mission alive for me and kept me seeing the critical concerns as a priority for wherever I end up in the world.
Wow, that was an excellent answer and a little bit of a plug for campus ministry for those of you who are on there. And we'll get to that towards the end, I promise. And so I think this is wonderful. I'm already getting some feedback from some of our participants that this is excellent. So thank you for your open questions. And I was going to follow up with a question about sharing a story from your experiences, but I think since Stephen kind of veered into this realm, I'm just going to go into this particular question. And so, as hopefully everybody on this call knows, it's Mercy Week. And Mercy Week is when we celebrate opening of the House of Mercy, September 24th. And so I guess for all three of you, and any of you can start, why do you think that this particular story, this opening of the House of Mercy by an Irish woman in the 19th century, and then the subsequent founding of an order of Catholic religious women, the Sisters of Mercy, why do you think that has had such a deep impact in the world today? I mean, each of you have been kind of effusive about, just remembering off the top of my head, the sisters are focused on justice. They're getting arrested. They're doing all of these things to create a better world. Why do you think that particular example of mercy shared back in the 19th century and that has continued to be shared over the course of like 190 years, almost 200 years? Why has that persisted? And any of you can kind of jump in on that.
I mean, I think for me, there's probably two things that resonate with me all these years later. The first is actually a particular quote that has sort of inspired me on a daily basis. And it's just Catherine saying that she resolves to be good today and better tomorrow. And I think that's a quote that inspires me on a daily basis. I think we all have our days where we're a little off and tomorrow could be better. And for me, I mean, it's at the bottom of my email at work. It's my inspiration to do my best today, but know that I can do better tomorrow. So it's her words sat with me. But I also think it's this idea that we talked about it in our Mercy Associate program. One of the things they talked about was the idea of being part of a community. You can spend your life kind of, trickling little drops here and there in the world and trying to make a difference. But if you're doing it within the same bucket, you can really have some difference in that flow of water into the bucket and make some change. So I think it's the idea that yes, did Catherine live a long time ago? Of course, but there's a group of people who are trickling the same drops into the same bucket, trying to make an impact and make a difference. And that's the community that I still love being involved in all these years after having graduated from Gwen and Mercy, and why I'm still involved with Michelle on the call and Allie on the call and others, because it really does resonate with me in my life and what I try to do every day, even working at a public school. I still resolve to be good today, but better tomorrow.
Excellent. Rachel, Marnie, any thoughts on that question of how the example of Catherine Macaulay and the sisters starting in the 19th century why it's persisted over the course of years? I see Rachel's unmuted.
Yeah, just kind of going off what Stephen had mentioned, I think like just coming into the Mercy Volunteer Corps, that's the first year I've heard about like the Circle of Mercy and all the people who are involved with Mercy. I think it really is community oriented, and the number of people, like when I was deciding if I wanted to join MVC in Rhode Island, I had met so many people who were former Mercy volunteers or knew someone who was a Mercy volunteer. So I definitely do think the community is there, and I definitely agree that it helps to keep this mission going, having these people, or all these people who are involved in the Circle of Mercy, to work towards service and justice.
Excellent. Marnie, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think what really inspires me about Catherine Macaulay, despite her having lived in a completely different time than I'm living in, and I think what really shapes like the way the Sisters of Mercy are today is that, like, first and foremost, like, she was about justice, and I think that's really cool. Like, she didn't become a sister, it didn't become a religious order until later when they had to, and so not to say that like negates them being a religious order, but like what she really wanted to do and what she cared about doing was being with people and serving people. And I think that's like the best way that we can show God's love, in my opinion. And yeah, so I think that's what really like makes it still so relevant today, because the fight for justice is just as strong and just as needed. And so it's really inspiring to be able to look to someone like Catherine Macaulay, who was seemingly just a regular old Irish woman that was able to create this lasting impact that is now the Sisters of Mercy, of people working to bring justice to all different parts of the world and all different realms of things. So I think that's really cool.
That's excellent. Thank you all for sharing all of that. So we've reached the bottom of the hour. We're going to keep going with questions, but I also wanted to mention at this point, the chat box has been open this whole time, but for those of you who maybe are sitting on the call thinking to themselves, man, I really want to ask a question. These panelists are so insightful. I really need to hear their perspective on this thought. Please feel free to type into the chat box your questions. I will receive them. You just type them directly to me, please. And I'm happy to ask our panelists the questions. So I'll wait for people to think and start typing. But in that time, I am going to ask our panelists what was supposed to be my fourth question, which is really going back to kind of that story sharing. I think each of you at this point have had some experience with sisters, seeing them, interacting with them. And so I guess if, and again, any of you can start, when you think of all those interactions with the sisters, is there one story or one moment with the sisters where you can say this moment describes Modern Mercy leadership? Like, this is the thing that really can encapsulate what we're talking about tonight, which is how the Sisters of Mercy and their example really impacts the world around us today.
I'm trying to have some flashbacks to all of my stories with Sister
I
Ann.
know
There's
it's just like the
There's so many.
Rolodex, right? Just pop, pop, pop,
There's
pop.
so
Yeah.
many.
Maybe I can start with one myself. And not I haven't really told many people this, but so I was hired at Gwynedd about 3 years ago. So for about a year and a half, we haven't been on campus. So that's how my time has gone so far. But I remember when I was interviewing, I was fortunate that part of the interview was sitting down with a sister of mercy named Sister Katie McMahon. And, in vulnerability, I'll say that this particular position is the first time I've ever been in a director position. And so Sister Katie and I will never forget this. We were walking out of a part of the interview and Sister Katie, for those who don't know, used to be the vice president for mission integration and planning here at Gwynedd Mercy University. And I was talking with her, we were talking about, I don't know how it came up, but I was just sharing with her a little trepidation, a little being nervous about, what it's going to be like when I have to sit with an office and manage an office. And she said this phrase that I'll never forget, which I think really encapsulates it. And she said to me, Jeff, it's never really managing people. It's always about managing situations. And for me, that made me remember I need to think about the people who I'm working with, not as subordinates or anything, but just as people. Like I am working with them. They have their lives, they have their interests, and it's my job to meet them where they are and be with them in that. But then also when these situations comes up, it's my job to help figure out a way, as Stephen, you're indicating, what is a practical way, what is a good way to satisfy what we need to get done. And, Sister Katie said that, and that's kind of been my own method of moving forward in terms of working in my own office. And so that's just, for me, kind of sums up that what we've been talking about, which is not only the emphasis on the individual and the relationship, but also that there are solutions to issues, but it's through the relationship, through the ways in which we interact with people, that those solutions can be found. So that's my own kind of story of modern mercy leadership.
Yeah, I guess thanks, Jeff, for stalling for a second because all those thoughts were flooding into my head. But for me, I'll tell two quick stories. One's super quick. So an example of what I think, where I think I saw Sister Georgia exemplify mercy would be when I was student teaching. I was a student at Gwynedd. I student taught on the reservation at the Catholic school. And we were sitting down and we were getting ready to have dinner together, and the doorbell rang. And Sister Georgia went to answer the door, and it was somebody asking for food. And she just reached into the pantry, grabbed a piece of bread and another piece of bread, made a sandwich and handed it to them, and then explained that people knew if they were hungry, they could knock on the door and she would have something for them. And that's just an example. Sister Georgia was paying for all of that out of her own personal pocket and making sure that they had stuff there. And that was just action, putting mercy into action. And then another story, which I think is probably a little more humorous for all of you, would be when I did my student teaching out in Arizona, I had never stepped foot in the state of Arizona before, ever. And where I was about 2 hours east of Phoenix. And Sister Ann took me one day way up top of this mountain. We drove all the way to the end of this dirt road, and she was taking me sightseeing. And we get to the end of the dirt road, and she's telling me a story about the tree that she sees in front of her and how much she loves this particular tree, and then proceeds to tell me to walk about a mile to the end of the road. And when I get to a gate, to stop. And so, mind you, I had never been to Arizona. I didn't really know Sister Ann very well, and I thought I was being slightly pranked in the middle of nowhere after having driven to this end of this road. So I get to the end of the road, and sure enough, I didn't have much of a choice but to stop at the fence, because there was a multi-1,000-foot drop at the other end of the fence. And as I stood there, not really looking at the fence anymore, all I could see was this beautiful expanse in front of me of this beautiful view with this gorgeous waterfall. And what Sister Anne said to me was, I wanted you to take that moment and be able to savor it on your own. And I think what she was teaching me, and what I think, again, is an example of modern mercy leadership in this world of fast pace. I mean, right before I got on this call, I was changing my shirt into a new shirt, and I was just scarfing down my dinner. In this fast paced society, it's important to take a moment to savor what we see in front of us, to absorb it, to be thankful for it, to express gratitude to it. And she taught me that in that moment, while also making me think I was going to die in the middle of the desert of Arizona. So, but it still was a worthy experience to savor the moment.
That's a lovely story, and sometimes it is in those moments where we confront our own mortality, where we can, but no, but the point stands, that ability to savor. I love that word. So thanks for sharing that. That was lovely. Rachel or Marnie, any thoughts, any stories come up for you?
Yeah, so for me, so at Salve, unfortunately, we didn't have very many Sisters of Mercy at the school. There were a few that worked in education, but I really didn't encounter them that much during my time there. But I have to say, so since being here in Philadelphia, this past weekend, actually, we got to go to the convent here, and we got to celebrate Mass and the Jubilee of all the sisters who were celebrating their like 25th, 50th anniversaries. And that Mass, I have to say, like, I could just feel the joy in the room and the joy of the sisters. They're just such joyful people. As someone had mentioned, that they're also known as the dancing sisters. And like, as they were practicing, the choir was practicing before the service. There were multiple sisters who were like dancing up the pews, and it was just really beautiful being able to be around that many sisters before, because other than the few sisters I've had the chance to listen to talks to during like 3 years ago, it was just so nice to meet so many, and they were all just so happy to meet us as Mercy volunteers. But yeah, I just have to say their joy. You could just feel it in the room, just being in the room.
This is, I promise I didn't pay these fees. This is like wonderful stuff. Thank you for that. Cause it's wonderful to remind us of that, because the story, and I don't exactly have it quite right, but sometimes at the end of a long day, I remember hearing stories about Catherine back when they first founded the sisters would just come in and, they would be doing all this really tough ministry, but then all of a sudden towards the end of the day, they just start dancing, like you were saying. And I think it's such a wonderful, again, that trickle that Stephen was talking about, that drop, that community that leads until now, that still continues, is really amazing. So thanks for sharing that, Rachel. Any other thoughts? Any other stories? Marnie, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'll just tell kind of a quick one, but yeah, I would definitely like echo that. I never, just their like joy and everything. Like I never thought that, like sitting down to dinner with a bunch of like 70 and 80-year-old women, that like I would have as much fun as I have had. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like really like, like so much, they're just such amazing people that like I genuinely enjoy being around. But yeah, one like kind of specific story that I had from last year, one of the sisters that was part of the community in San Francisco, she was involved with where I worked. Like she was one of the people who kind of sat on like an advisory committee, so she like knew some of the community. But towards the end of the year, we had like a goodbye celebration for me, and she came, and I was just like so happy to see her and like I didn't know she was going to be there. And but yeah, but like when she was there, like I was like, I don't know, like in my head I was like, oh yeah, like this is all about me, like come on, like where's the praise, jokingly, but she like spent the whole time just like because this was one of our first times, like we were outside, but like being together, the community being together in person since COVID. So it was kind of like a little bit of like, some people had just joined since the pandemic, like didn't really know each other, like a little bit like awkward, like people kind of like standing, not knowing what to do. And like, she was just kind of going around to everyone and like just engaging in conversation with them, like talking to them, figuring out or asking them how they're doing, like just such like meaningful, deep conversations, like was really making an effort to like just like the type of person that makes everyone feel like the most important person in the room, which I think is a really cool quality to have. But yeah, so that was just really cool to watch. Although I was like, wish I would have had more time with her because that's just like how great they are. But yeah.
That's awesome. No, it's, I can tell from each of your stories that you just have found kind of the richness of what seems like the Mercy charism. And as admittedly somebody who's relatively new to all of this, I studied in Jesuit schools most of my life. Don't hold it against me. I think it's pretty great. I know people have mixed reviews, but it's really nice to be able to be part of that. And as we said, feel like part of the circle of mercy. And so just to reiterate, if anybody does have questions, I typed in the chat box, feel free to type them here. But I do have one more or two more kind of questions for you. The first one is, each of you have shared a story about how, about Modern Mercy leadership in kind of practice and what it looks like from your experience. Now, I guess, and we've kind of touched on this in a few different answers, but if you could think about the ways that you've experienced this charisms, mercies, Modern Mercy leadership, and talk about how, like, any of lessons that you may have learned from it as you are working either as a Mercy volunteer or in your current work. What are some of those lessons that you are actively using within your work?
I have to say, like, the importance of the human being. That is one thing that I have taken with me during my work at Project Home, because a lot of the people, so mostly I've been working on the hotline, the call center, where people call in and we will refer them to shelters. And some people, like today specifically, there was this one person who called in and was just like absolutely sobbing because she needed a place to go. And I feel like most like hotlines, they assume that you're going to be very short with them and like you're just on the phone all day. So some people working hotlines in other instances may just be a little frustrating, but I think remembering that there's a human being on the other side of the phone is so important. And so I sat with her and I was like, it's okay. Take a deep breath. Tell me what's going on. And we can figure out where you need to go, what we need to do. And so it took her a few minutes to kind of collect herself. And she was just, I don't know, just these people or individuals who call in are just in such vulnerable situations, and just remembering that they are human, and that they're asking for help. And so I think it's just so important to remember that, and not only in just the work that I'm doing currently, but even in our day-to-day world and the people that we interact with, I think is so important.
Thank you for that. Stephen or Marnie?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a few takeaways that I've learned in my work, both at Gwynedd and beyond with sisters. One would just to be present in the moments in the world that you are existing in. Sister Georgia constantly worked with me on trying to be more mindful in moments, because my brain operates so fast. I'm constantly thinking about what's next. And I'm sure, like most of us on this call, we're thinking about dinner that we're having next, or going to bed early tonight, or that paper we have to write. So I think being more present in those moments is something I take away from Sister Georgia every day. And then from Sister Anne, I take away the need to put relationships first in everything that we do. There's a quote that goes something like, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, or something along those lines. And I think Sister Anne really taught me that if they see your heart, if they see your true passion, if they see who you are, they're willing to do much more. And even now, as a young leader in our district with 20 people who I directly supervise, I try to show that heart. I try to show that care for the individual and put that relationship first in everything that I do, to model that care and that ability to create those lasting relationships.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Marnie, you're unmuted, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what I would say is kind of similar to what Rachel said, and it's not necessarily specifically like an element of mercy, but I think it aligns well with the mercy teachings. Is that like I've just really tried to like look at every interaction I have in this space with like a lens of like trying to understand like the underlying trauma that people have experienced, because it's really easy to, in an interaction with someone where they're being rude to you or where they're being very demanding or just any number of things, like it's easy for me to like immediately look at that and be like, I would never treat someone that way, or like or I didn't do anything to deserve this, like I'm just trying to help you. But like trying to understand like what they must have had to endure, or even just the vulnerability of being in a situation of needing to ask someone for food, or needing to go to a place to shower, because I worked at a place last year where we like offered showers. And yeah, like there's a reason that people behave the way that they do. And it's easy for me, having come from the background that I did, to be able to handle situations in the way I do. And sometimes even I'm not good at that. So like people are people, and they don't need to act or behave in a certain way in order to receive or be deserving of respect. And they don't even need to say thank you. So I think having that lens has been really helpful for me. And also just knowing that like you can bring joy and laughter and fun into everything that you do. And I think, yeah, like we had just talked about, like that's a big element of like the Sisters of Mercy, is that not everything has to be serious all the time, and you can still be doing good work and have fun while doing it. And I think that it makes it a better experience for everyone, because that's a really important element of life in general, in my opinion. So
Thanks for that. And there's actually a crowd question that connects to what you were talking about. But before we got there, I wanted to just ask this question. And really, I guess for Stephen, but all these people on this call, I'm sure, are very inspired by everything that you've said. And they're probably chomping at the bit, wondering how they can do stuff like this. Like, what are some ways that they can pursue living out modern mercy leadership? I know, Stephen, I think given you're an alum of Gwynedd Mercy University, there are specific ways that you were able to do that while you were here that still continue through campus ministry. But Rachel or Marnie, kind of as you weren't at Gwynedd, but you being college students, like ways that you were able to kind of explore modern mercy leadership through your college experience, and then even through Mercy Volunteer Corps, if you want to talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to pass it to Stephen first, so he can kind of do the campus ministry plug, which I didn't pay him for. So
yeah, I would definitely first and foremost say get involved. Get as involved as you possibly can. It's not just about building a solid resume. It's about getting those unique experiences that are going to transform your future. It was actually because of a Mercy Meets the UN conference that I went to with my involvement at campus ministry that I ended up moving to New York City and working on my master's degree in international educational development. I would have never had that experience had I not first had a Gwynedd experience of involvement. So, whether it's volunteering once a week for a current service trip that might be going on, or a service opportunity that randomly comes up, or joining a club that's related to your major. Like I was heavily involved in the education club and the special education club, or giving up your spring break once or twice while you're at Gwynedd to do an alternative spring break trip. Those experiences will open your eyes to the world beyond Gwynedd Valley. I grew up in Schwenksville, which is not too far from Gwynedd Valley. So my backyard was Gwinnett Valley, for lack of better words. Most of my family's from Willow Grove. So being able to have an experience where you get to see beyond what we're used to or beyond what we've experienced growing up is certainly a great experience and a unique experience. But it's again where you get to see the face of Mercy. You get to go out and see what the experience of having an impact feels and looks like. And those experiences are priceless. And that, still to this day, I volunteer on a regular basis because of my experience with Gwinnett.
Thank you. Rachel or Marnie jumping in.
I have to say, so we, at Salve, we had the Mercy Center, which was our campus ministry. And I mentioned I was a transfer student, and for me, that was joining the Mercy Center and going to their events that they had to offer, their service opportunities. That's where I felt community at school, and where I met some of my closest friends. So not only was I able to have opportunities to do all these great service opportunities, but I also got to meet so many great people and build that community. And even the campus ministers that worked in the Mercy Center had open office hours. You could, if you had anything going on and just wanted to talk to someone, they were always there. And I imagine that's the same thing at Gwinnett. So just having that as an option. And I also ended up joining on their leadership team. So we would hold events for everyone on campus. And it's just a fun, relaxing environment. So I imagine that's kind of the same thing on how Gwinnett is, but yeah, I definitely recommend to take advantage of those opportunities.
We are exactly like that, Rachel. Thank you. You didn't even go to Gwinnett, and that's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Fantastic. Marty, anything to add?
Okay, I don't know if this is a campus ministry sponsored event or something, but I just want to say from a different perspective, campus ministry is great. If that's what you're interested in, like definitely go and do that. But I personally was not involved at all with my campus ministry because that's just not my type of thing. But like I would say that if that's not your thing, then like there's other opportunities for things to get involved in. Like I did similarly like a alternative break experience. We didn't call it that, but I like got involved with service. And I would just say like surround yourself with people that inspire you and just like talk to them about how they did what they did, like whether it be a professor or like upperclassmen or even just like friends that might be more familiar with something that you're not. But yeah, like surround yourself with those people that you may think like, oh no, like I could never do what they did, but like you can. But I think you just need to like talk to people and start to get more familiar with it, because it's kind of intimidating to go at things on your own. But there's many different opportunities too, and things you can get involved in, I'm sure.
Yes, and to that end, so I want to just shout out a few different people on our call. Kirsten Swanson and where did Janice go? Janice Nuss, co-chairs of our Mission and Values Committee. They helped put together our Mercy Week agenda for the whole week. We also have Associate Director for Office of Student Engagement, Ali Jabbar Johnston, as well as Michelle Murray, who's the Associate Director of Residence Life, both of whom are very interested in Mercy on campus, both of whom are not necessarily connected to campus ministry, but will probably be able to talk better about Mercy than I can in every way. Allie's put a way to connect in the chat. I've put a variety of different things in the chat, especially if you're interested in an alternative break. You can email my colleague, our Assistant Director for Community Service, Betsy Stone Plummer, at plummer.b@gmercu.edu. And also for those who are here, guess what? You're the first to know. We're going to drop our applications for alternative break mid-October. So mark your calendars. It's happening. We're hoping to send y'all to some good places, COVID pending. But if that's something you're really interested in, please feel free to do so. And also just to say, I know with Janice Nuss in the social work program, plenty of opportunities through social work to get involved through your academics. And all over the campus. Um, so two more questions from the crowd. I know we're right at time. But I'm also, for those of you who do need to jump, I'm going to put a really gross link into the um, uh, chat, which is really for a survey. It looks really not great, but click it. It's a survey of our event tonight. Please feel free to give us feedback. And now just quickly for our panelists, we had one question about, have any of you been to the House of Mercy in Dublin? I see some heads nodding. Share a little bit about that quickly.
Yeah, I was able to go on the first trip of students that went from Gwynedd to visit the International Community or International Mercy Center. And there's really no words. There's no words to experience the place where you can walk the footsteps that Catherine walked and find where the inspiration started. All I'm going to say is I have a small piece of tile from the original roof with the word peace on it that drives around with me in my car every day. And it serves as a reminder that the path continues on, even if the path started hundreds of years ago. So yes, I was able to go, truly inspirational to be able to visit that place.
Any others of our panelists have traveled?
No, I have not been, but yeah, I definitely, the sisters have said like that I knew last year. They were like, yeah, no, like if you go, like you'll have a place to stay, like just like being in the circle of mercy. I feel like I don't know. It's like I would love to take advantage of it at some point.
Me too.
Yeah.
Rachel, have you stayed or no?
I have not. I had a few friends though who they took a trip like every 2 years through Salve, but it was the year before I transferred in. So, but I heard really great things about it, and I look forward to doing it someday, hopefully.
Excellent. Last question, and then everybody's free to go. So this is from the crowd as well. We've talked a lot about how we're doing modern mercy leadership with the Sisters of Mercy in that context. And we talked about some of the lessons that we learned from them. Question from the crowd was, well, what about when you're not in those contexts? So for example, say you're in a conversation with a friend or family member and some disagreement comes up, or you find yourself in a conflict at work. How do those values, or just any other situation that's outside of really just being, where the source is, where the Sisters of Mercy are, how do you implement those lessons that you've learned in those types of situations? And if I'm remembering back correctly, Marnie, your answer to the question about how the lessons from the sisters just have impacted your life in general kind of steered into that a little bit. So I don't know if you had anything else to add to that about, how do you take those lessons and really put it into your lifestyle outside of kind of Sister Mercy connections?
Yeah, I think something that I always strive to do is because I think we live in or I don't know, like in these times, I think there's a lot of disagreements, conflict, just varying opinions. It's really hard to have, it seems really hard to have a civil conversation, but I think that in every conversation I have with people, whether I agree with them or not, like I always, I'm seeking to understand where they're coming from as best as I can, and always listening as best as I can, and just hoping that they will be willing to offer me the same. And yeah, and I think it all goes back to seeing everyone as a person, and regardless of what they might say or think, they are just as worthy of respect as anyone else. And so I think that's important to always keep in mind, or also like reflect back, because maybe in the moment you got ahead of yourself or said something that you wouldn't have wanted to say, but like if you're always thinking and reflecting on your actions, I think it allows us to do better in the future, because we all make mistakes and stuff. I do quite frequently.
Yes, I also, we all make mistakes. Rachel or Stephen, any other kind of final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think to kind of just echo what Marnie said, I think just listening and trying to understand where people are coming from, especially when it is something that you disagree upon. Um, I think it's just so easy to say no, this is I'm right, but I think you're not going to get anywhere in any situation if that's kind of your mindset. So I think just asking questions, trying to understand. Um, Others and where they're coming from in those instances.
Yeah, and I'd say for me personally, since leaving Gwinnett, I haven't actually been directly working with Sisters of Mercy. Even when I was back out in Arizona, I was working in the public school system there, and similarly when I was in the Bronx. So I try my very level best to find common ground with folks. I think that's what the sisters taught me. That's what my experience at Gwinnett taught me. No matter what walk of life we come from, when we have a cut, we all bleed the same way. So finding the common ground for people to be able to see or gear towards a specific issue is useful. I have disagreements with my own family in the political world and other worlds. So I think that's going to be an interaction we encounter regularly. I've had to discipline staff, and that's not an easy thing to do as a supervisor, but in those experiences, reminding us that they are human and we have common grounds, and putting that first, putting the person first is really helpful, and then steering it towards some sort of action. So whether you're writing to your local senators or making phone calls, whatever you're doing has to be some sort of drop in the bucket to make some sort of change for a better future. And I'll give one more plug before I stop talking, Jeff. For those of you who don't know, today is the International Day of Peace. So if you have a moment to just Google that and what that means, and maybe something you could do to strive more for peaceful environments, especially in this day and age where there is a lot of violence happening within our communities, both verbal, physical, nonverbal. Take a Google on that real quick to see what you could do to be involved with that.
That's excellent. It's a great, great reminder and a great way to end our time together. So again, thank you to Stephen Roof, to Rachel Bielgard, Marnie Baim for being with us. I don't know if those of you who are still on Zoom have your little reactions. You can give them a round of applause through your reaction screen. It really got some hearts. Wow, it gives you a count. We have 1 heart, 7 rounds of applause, 8, 9. Really great stuff. All of those who are still on, please look at the chat, click that survey, give us your Yelp review. It's 5 stars, 1 star. Give us some feedback. We want these particular events to be good for you. We want this to be worth your time. We love any feedback that you can give. But with that being said, thanks for your time, everybody who joined us. And we'll see you throughout Mercy Week.